"I've always wanted to know if it's true what they say about humans and pain," said the blue-skinned alien, adjusting something that looked suspiciously like a bone saw. "That you can actually feel it in ways we superior species have evolved beyond." Lieutenant Amara Amy Rodriguez strained against her restraints and offered what she hoped was a winning smile. "Buddy, I'd be happy to tell you all about human pain tolerance over a nice cup of coffee. This whole strapped-to-a-table thing is a bit much for a first date, don't you think?" The alien Dr. Grant, according to the translator badge pinned to his lab coat, tilted his elongated head. The gesture reminded Amy of a confused golden retriever, if golden retrievers had 4 eyes and skin that occasionally rippled with bioluminescent patterns. "Your species' reliance on humor as a defense mechanism is well documented," Grant noted clinically. "Though I must say, the fleet intelligence briefings hardly prepared me for how irritating it is in person." "Sorry we can't all communicate through pretentious color patterns and condescension," Amy shot back. The capture had been humiliatingly simple. Her scout ship had been mapping an uncharted sector when the massive Laxian vessel appeared seemingly out of nowhere. No warning, no demands for surrender, just a tractor beam, and then darkness. She'd woken up here, in this sterile laboratory that smelled like antiseptic and something vaguely cinnamon adjacent. "The human continues to display aggression despite clear power imbalance," Grant dictated to his recording device. "Fascinating evolutionary flaw. The Laxian continues to talk about the human like she's not in the room," Amy mimicked. "Fascinating social awkwardness." A door slid open with a pneumatic hiss, revealing a taller, thinner alien with skin that shimmered in deep purples and greens. Unlike Grant's functional lab attire, this newcomer wore an elaborate set of robes that seemed designed to emphasize their importance. "Commander Teth," Grant said, his skin flashing patterns that Amy's translator couldn't quite parse. "Was that anxiety? Respect?" "Doctor," acknowledged Commander Teth. "This is the human specimen?" "Lieutenant Amara Rodriguez of the Earth Exploratory Fleet," Amy supplied helpfully. "Though my friends call me Amy. You're not my friends, so you can stick with Lieutenant Rodriguez." Teth's 4 eyes blinked in sequence, right to left. "Quite spirited for a species whose military vessels we can disable with technology that's practically recreational for us. Sorry we haven't mastered the universe yet. We've been busy inventing pizza and reality television." "Your cultural achievements are irrelevant." Teth glided closer, examining Amy like she was a particularly interesting insect. "The Laxian Empire has been studying your kind for decades. Yet certain physiological quirks continue to elude us. Have you tried just asking nicely?" Teth's skin rippled with dark crimson patterns. "The Laxian Empire does not ask. We take what knowledge we require." Cool motto. Does it look good on recruitment posters? Another alien entered, this one shorter, stockier, with a complexion that shifted between yellow and orange. "Lab 3 is prepped for initial cellular degradation tests," it announced. Amy's heart sank, but she kept her expression neutral. "Cellular degradation? Sounds fancy. Do I get anesthesia, or should I just bite down on something?" "Anesthesia would interfere with our readings," Grant replied matter-of-factly. "Don't worry, we'll start with just one limb." As they wheeled her gurney toward what promised to be an exceedingly unpleasant experience, Amy took stock of her surroundings. The corridors of the research vessel were vast, clearly designed for a species larger than humans. Doorways branched off at irregular intervals, some guarded by hulking Laxian security personnel, others standing open to reveal glimpses of laboratories filled with equipment she couldn't begin to identify. "Just so you know," Amy called out to the aliens escorting her, "the Geneva Convention would have a field day with this setup." "Your Earth conventions are irrelevant in Laxian space," Teth replied dismissively. "Yeah, that's what I figured you'd say." Amy closed her eyes briefly, activating her subdermal transmitter. No response. Either the ship was blocking signals, or she was too far from any Earth communication relays. Probably both. As they entered Lab 3, Amy caught sight of a view screen displaying what had to be a map of the vessel. sprawling and labyrinthine, it would take a miracle to navigate even if she somehow managed to escape her restraints. But Lieutenant Amara Rodriguez didn't believe in no-win scenarios. She just needed to stay alive long enough to find an opportunity. And to do that, she'd have to endure whatever these four-eyed sadists had planned. Let the record show announced a new alien entering the room taller than Teth, with skin that glowed an authoritative deep blue. That specimen human 7429 examination begins under the authority of Chief Scientist Vex Lore. Amy rolled her eyes. Let my personal record show that I've decided to name you all after Earth cartoon characters. You're grumpy, she nodded at Vex Lore. You're dopey, to Grant, and you, Commander, are definitely sneezy. Vex Lore's skin pulsed with patterns that even without translation, Amy recognized as pure contempt. Begin the procedure, he ordered. Day 3 of captivity, and Amy had decided that the QR Laxians had never heard of the concept of bedside manner. Or beds, for that matter. They generously moved her from the examination table to a containment cell with a surface that was technically flat but seemed to actively resist providing comfort. Rise, human, came the electronic voice through the cell's communication system. Chief Scientist Vex Lore requires your presence. Tell the Chief Scientist that I require 5 more minutes of beauty sleep, Amy mumbled into the not-quite pillow. The door slid open regardless, and 2 security personnel entered massive QR Laxians with reinforced exoskeletons covering their natural skin. Amy had nicknamed them Tweedledee and Tweedledum. Good morning, boys, she said cheerfully as they roughly hauled her to her feet. Any chance of breakfast? I'm thinking waffles. You guys have waffles in this sector of space, right? Or is that considered contraband in the mighty QR Laxian Empire? Neither guard responded, which wasn't surprising. In 3 days, she'd yet to get either of them to crack so much as an alien equivalent of a smile. They marched her down the now familiar corridor to what she'd mentally dubbed the fun room, where Vex Lore and his team had spent the previous days conducting increasingly invasive tests. So far, they'd taken samples of practically every fluid her body produced, subjected her to radiation levels that probably gave her exciting new cancer risks, and tested her reflexes in ways that seemed designed primarily to cause pain. Ah, specimen human 7429, Vex Lore greeted her, not looking up from his console. His skin was pulsing with excited patterns of blue and green. Today we advanced to more significant testing. Can't wait, Amy replied, wincing as the guards secured her to the examination table. What's on today's agenda? Fingernail extraction? Tooth drilling? I'm personally rooting for something involving my spleen. It never gets enough attention. Dr. Grant approached with something that looked distressingly like a medieval torture device. We will be testing human pain thresholds and autonomic nervous system responses. So torture. You could just say torture. It's more honest. Vex Lore finally looked at her, all 4 eyes blinking in that disconcerting right-to-left sequence. Science is not torture, human. It is methodical inquiry. Methodical inquiry that just happens to involve causing me extreme pain. Precisely. Your understanding is improving. The first hour was manageable. Electric shocks, temperature extremes, carefully controlled lacerations. Amy had undergone resistance training as part of her military preparation. She'd gritted her teeth, made sarcastic comments when she could catch her breath, and focused on memorizing details about the lab and its personnel. By hour 3, she was no longer making jokes. By hour 5, she was no longer screaming. Fascinating, Vex Lore noted, examining readings on his console. The human pain response is remarkably adaptive. Note how the endorphin levels have spiked to compensate. Perhaps we should allow a recovery period, suggested a younger researcher named Miptseats, whose skin occasionally flashed with what Amy had come to recognize as patterns of concern. Unnecessary, Vex Lore dismissed. The specimen remains conscious. We will proceed to phase 2. Amy tried to form words, to make some final defiant quip, but her throat was raw from screaming. Instead, she locked eyes with Vex Lore and managed the smallest of smiles. A smile that said, I'm still here. You haven't broken me. Something flashed across Vexlor's features, frustration perhaps. His skin rippled with dark crimson patterns. Prepare the neural interface, he ordered. All sensory override protocols. Even the stoic Dr. Grant hesitated. Chief scientist, the neural interface has not been calibrated for human physiology. The risk of permanent damage is acceptable. Vexlor cut him off. This specimen has demonstrated unusual resilience. I want to understand the limits of human neural plasticity. As they brought forward a device that looked like a metallic crown studded with needles, Amy felt something beyond fear. A strange calm. They'd pushed too far, too fast. These arrogant aliens, so convinced of their superiority, hadn't bothered to study human biology thoroughly enough. They didn't know what happened when you pushed humans to their absolute limits. They didn't know about Phoenix Protocol. The crown descended onto her head, needles piercing her scalp. The pain was immediate and overwhelming, like every nerve was being incinerated simultaneously. Her last conscious thought was almost amused. These idiots have no idea what they've just activated. The monitors flatlined. Cardiac arrest, announced Dr. Grant, his skin pulsing with alarm patterns. Respiratory failure. Central nervous system collapse. Interesting, Vexlor noted, seemingly unconcerned. Record time of death, and prepare the specimen for immediate autopsy. I want neural tissue samples before degradation begins. As the laboratory staff bustled around the now lifeless body of Lieutenant Amara Rodriguez, none of them noticed the almost imperceptible darkening of her veins, or the microscopic machines that were already beginning their work. Time of death, 1427 Ship Standard Time, Dr. Grant dictated, his skin displaying subdued professional patterns. Cause, systematic failure of human physiological systems under experimental neural load. Vexlor hovered over the body, 4 eyes blinking with what might have been satisfaction. A disappointing conclusion, but not unexpected. Human physiology is remarkably fragile despite their species' inexplicable expansion across multiple star systems. Should we inform Fleet Command? Asked Miptzy, the junior researcher. This was a military specimen. There may be political repercussions. Repercussions? Vexlor's skin flashed with dismissive patterns. From humans? They're barely a blip in galactic politics. Prepare the neural tissue extraction. I want samples from the hippocampus and amygdala regions first. Dr. Grant gathered his instruments, approaching the body with clinical detachment. He had just positioned the cranial saw when he paused, head tilted in confusion. Chief scientist, he said slowly, I'm detecting anomalous readings from the specimen. What sort of anomalies? Vexlor didn't look up from his console. Electrical activity in neural tissue, faint but present. And Grant's voice trailed off as his skin pulsed with confusion. There appears to be some form of cellular reconstruction occurring. That got Vexlor's attention. All 4 eyes swiveled toward the body. Impossible. Check your equipment. I've already run diagnostics, Grant insisted, his professional composure slipping. The readings are accurate. And there's something else, microscopic structures in the bloodstream that weren't present during our earlier examinations. Vexlor pushed Grant aside, examining the readings himself. His skin darkened to a deep, concerned purple. Magnify blood sample, maximum resolution. The view screen flickered to life, showing a magnified view of Amy's blood. Among the red cells were tiny metallic objects, geometric and clearly artificial, moving with purpose rather than flowing passively with the bloodstream. Nanites, Vexlor breathed, his voice a mixture of horror and fascination. Advanced ones, self-replicating by the look of them. But how Miptzy began. Military implantation. Obviously, Vexlor interrupted. A failsafe system we missed in our scans. His skin rippled with reluctant admiration. Clever primitives. On the examination table, Amy's finger twitched. The specimen is reanimating, Grant reported unnecessarily, backing away from the table. Vital signs returning. Impossible, Vex-Lore repeated, but with less conviction. No species has mastered cellular reconstruction at this level. Clearly the humans have, Grant replied, his skin displaying patterns of increasing alarm. Amy's eyes snapped open. For one long moment, the laboratory was absolutely silent. Then Amy spoke, her voice perfectly calm and utterly different from her previous sarcastic tone. Phoenix protocol activated. Assessing damage. Initiating cellular repair. Tactical systems online. Restrain it? Vex-Lore ordered, but no one moved. They were all staring at Amy's eyes, which now had a subtle metallic gleam. Amy sat up, the restraints that had held her snapping as if they were made of paper. She looked around the laboratory with clinical interest, like she was seeing it for the first time. Interesting, she said, in that same calm voice. Your neural interface device provided an unexpected opportunity. Thank you for that. What opportunity? Vex-Lore demanded, trying to maintain his authoritative demeanor, despite the fear patterns now clearly visible on his skin. Amy smiled, and it was nothing like her previous smiles. This one contained no humor, no defiance, just cold calculation. The Phoenix Protocol was designed for battlefield resurrection, she explained, as casually as if discussing the weather. But your neural interface created a direct pathway to your ship's systems. The nanites adapted. Evolved. She tilted her head, eerily similar to the Laxian gesture. I can feel your ship. Every system. Every corridor. Every life support function. She turned her gaze to a nearby console, and the screens flickered, displaying information faster than any Laxian could process it. You interfaced with our systems? Grant asked, horrified. Interfaced, integrated, improved, Amy replied. She flexed her hand, studying it with detached interest. The nanites are restructuring my cellular makeup based on the data they gathered from your experiments. More efficient now. Stronger. Faster. This is impossible, Vex-Lore insisted, but his skin was displaying patterns that the others had never seen before, pure, unadulterated fear. Amy's gaze fell on him, and her expression hardened. You're the one who chose the neural interface. The one who pushed beyond safe parameters. The one who killed me. She stepped forward, and Vex-Lore involuntarily stepped back. I remember everything. The laboratory doors suddenly sealed shut with a decisive clang. What did you do? Miptz asked, voice trembling. I've isolated this section of the ship, Amy replied calmly. No communications in or out. No possibility of interference. She looked around at the terrified researchers. Just us. Just science. Isn't that what you wanted? An alarm began to blare, then abruptly cut off. I've disabled that, Amy noted. Unnecessary noise disrupts concentration. Vex-Lore rallied his courage. Guards, he shouted. Security breach in Laboratory 3. They can't hear you, Amy told him. And even if they could, she gestured at the view screen, which now showed security personnel collapsed in the corridor outside, unconscious but alive. I've adjusted the atmospheric composition in adjacent sections. They're sleeping. She began walking around the laboratory, examining equipment with newfound interest. Fascinating technology you have. Primitive in some ways, surprisingly advanced in others. She picked up a scalpel, testing its weight in her hand. Now who wants to help me conduct some experiments of my own? I'm particularly interested in Laxian pain thresholds. The assembled alien skin patterns shifted to universal terror. After all, Amy continued, voice dropping to a whisper, I'm just practicing methodical inquiry. Dr. Grant huddled in the supply closet, his skin muted to camouflage gray, trying to control his breathing. It had been 6 hours since the human No. The thing that used to be human had escaped Laboratory 3. 6 hours of steadily diminishing hope. His communication device vibrated silently against his skin. A text-only message from Miptz. Location? Grant hesitated before responding. Could he trust the message? Was it truly from Mipseats, or was the creature using the ship's systems to lure him out? The closet door slid open. Interesting hiding place, Amy said conversationally. Though hiding implies I couldn't track your biological signature through the ship's environmental sensors. Grant's skin involuntarily flashed patterns of terror before he could suppress them. Please, he whispered. I advocated for less invasive testing. I questioned Vexlor's methods. Yes, you did, Amy acknowledged, leaning against the doorframe. Her posture was relaxed, almost casual, which somehow made her more terrifying. That's why you're still conscious and not experiencing what your chief scientist is currently going through. The implication hung in the air between them. What do you want? Grant managed to ask. Amy considered the question. Initially, to escape, to survive. But your neural interface device created something new. Something more than human, more than machine. She tapped her temple. The nanites are still adapting, still learning. And they've developed quite an interest in QR-Laxian physiology. The scream echoed through the ship's corridors, distant but unmistakable. Vexlor's voice, distorted by pain. Don't worry about him, Amy said, noticing Grant's reaction. He's making a valuable contribution to science. You're torturing him, Grant accused, finding a small reservoir of courage. No, Amy corrected. I'm conducting methodical inquiry. There's a difference. He explained it to me quite thoroughly. Her eyes gleamed with that unsettling metallic sheen. But you might be useful in other ways. In the ship's medical bay, Commander Teth was desperately trying to coordinate what remained of the security forces. Of the original 30-member research team, only 18 had reported in. The others were either dead or being kept alive for the creature's purposes. Status report, he demanded of the communications officer. All long-range communications remain disabled, the officer reported, skin patterns showing distress. Internal communications are intermittent and unreliable. Life support is functional but operating at minimum capacity. And the creature? Last confirmed sighting was in Sector 7, near the Auxiliary Research Labs. It had Dr. Krill with it. Krill appeared to be assisting voluntarily. Teth's skin darkened with anger. Treason? Or survival, suggested Security Chief Lormex. The creature seems to spare those who cooperate. It's manipulating us, Teth insisted, turning us against each other. The lights flickered, then stabilized at a lower intensity. I've rerouted power to critical systems, announced the engineering liaison. But it's as if the ship is fighting us. Every change we make is countered within minutes. Because the creature is integrated with our systems, Teth said grimly. It knows our moves before we make them. A notification chimed on the main console. A ship-wide communication request. After a moment's hesitation, Teth nodded. Accept. Amy's face appeared on the view screen. She looked calm, composed, and disturbingly healthy, a stark contrast to the haggard QR-Laxians. Commander Teth, she greeted him. Or should I call you Sneezy? I've lost track of my own jokes at this point. What do you want? Teth demanded. Such a direct question, Amy mused. No pleasantries, no negotiation tactics. I'm disappointed. She leaned closer to the camera. What I want is simple. Control of this vessel and the cooperation of its crew. You're insane if you think. I'm not finished, Amy interrupted, her voice hardening. I've already demonstrated what happens to those who resist. Vexlor is currently experiencing a detailed analysis of his own nervous system. Others who opposed me are participating in similar studies. She stepped back, revealing a small group of QR-Laxian researchers behind her, including Dr. Grant and Mipseats. They looked frightened, but unharmed. These individuals, however, have chosen a more productive partnership. They're helping me understand your technology, your biology, your weaknesses. Amy smiled. It's a much more comfortable arrangement for everyone involved. Traitors, Teth hissed. survivors, Amy corrected. Which will you be, Commander? The view screen went black before Teth could respond. In a nearby corridor, 3 security personnel moved cautiously, weapons drawn. They communicated through skin patterns rather than speech, minimizing the chance of detection. Central laboratory secure, the lead officer's skin flashed, moving to secondary target. A figure stepped around the corner ahead of them, Dr. Krill, the biochemistry specialist. Help me, he gasped, skin displaying distress patterns. She's right behind me. The security team hesitated, suspicious. Please, Krill begged. I escaped. She was distracted with Vex lore. She'll kill me if... The overhead ventilation grate crashed down, and Amy dropped into the corridor behind the security team. Before they could turn, she had disabled 2 of them with precise strikes to pressure points they didn't even know humans could identify. The 3rd officer managed to fire his weapon, but Amy moved with impossible speed, the energy bolt missing her by centimeters. She reached him in 3 fluid strides, disarmed him with one hand, and lifted him by the throat with the other. Thank you for your assistance, Dr. Krill, she said without looking back. Krill's skin displayed patterns of regret. I had no choice. There's always a choice, Amy replied. You chose survival. She turned her attention to the struggling security officer. Now you have the same choice to make. Assist me willingly, or contribute to my research involuntarily. Back in the medical bay, Commander Teth watched with growing horror as Amy's influence spread throughout the ship, section by section, crew member by crew member. She was taking control either through technological domination or through the simple calculus of survival that was turning his people into collaborators. We've lost contact with Security Team 3, reported the communications officer. Teth's skin pulsed with resignation patterns. There was only one option left. Initiate self-destruct protocols, he ordered. Authorization Teth Omega-9. The computer remained silent. Computer, acknowledge command. Amy's voice came through the communication system instead. Sorry, Commander. I've made some adjustments to the authorization protocols. The self-destruct function now requires my approval as well. She paused. I wouldn't recommend trying anything similar. It just makes me irritated. As if to emphasize her point, the life support systems in the medical bay noticeably dimmed, the temperature dropping several degrees. Just a gentle reminder of who controls this ship now, Amy's voice continued. I'll be seeing you soon, Commander. We have so much to discuss. Commander Teth had always prided himself on his tactical acumen. 23 cycles of military service, 14 major engagements, and not once had he faced a situation he couldn't strategize his way out of. Until now. Now. Status report, he demanded, though he already knew the answer. Security Chief Lormex's skin displayed resignation patterns. The creature controls 70% of the ship. All attempts to isolate command functions have failed. Life support remains at minimal levels in sections still under our control. And the crew? 47 confirmed loyal. 31 confirmed collaborating with the creature. The rest are unaccounted for. Teth's skin darkened. How many security personnel remain? 12, sir. Less than a third of their original strength. And with each passing hour, the creature's control expanded. They needed a new strategy, something unexpected. The specimens, Teth said suddenly. The other alien specimens in the containment level. Lormex's skin flashed with alarm. Sir, releasing those specimens would violate at least 17 Imperial protocols. And allowing this ship to fall into enemy hands would violate our primary directive, Teth countered. The specimens are our only unpredictable element. The human may control our systems, but those creatures operate on completely different biological principles. Before Lormex could respond, the doors to the command center slid open. Amy stood there, flanked by Dr. Grent and 2 security officers whose skin patterns identified them as former loyalists. That's an interesting plan, Commander, Amy said conversationally. But unfortunately, I'm already aware of your specimens. In fact, I've had some fascinating conversations with them. Teth stared in disbelief. Impossible. The translator matrices aren't configured for those species. They aren't configured for direct neural interface either, Amy replied with a slight smile. I've made improvements. She entered the command center fully, her movements fluid and confident. The security officers, still loyal to Teth, raised their weapons but seemed hesitant to fire. I wouldn't recommend violence, Amy advised them. Not only would it be ineffective against me, but I've integrated so thoroughly with your ship's systems that killing me might trigger catastrophic failures in life support. What do you want? Teth demanded, his skin betraying his frustration despite his efforts to remain composed. Amy considered him for a moment. Initially, revenge. You captured me, tortured me, killed me. She shrugged. But the nanites have evolved beyond simple human emotion. This is about something more significant now. And what might that be? Teth asked, trying to buy time as he surreptitiously signaled the remaining security personnel to spread out. Information. Amy replied simply. Your empire has been studying humans for decades, accumulating data, formulating strategies. I want that information to use against us. To understand the relationship between our species, Amy corrected. The nanites are curious. They've never encountered Laxian physiology before. The neural interface created new possibilities, new understandings. She gestured, and the main view screen activated, displaying complex equations and biological models that shifted faster than the Laxians could process. Your species has remarkable adaptive capabilities, Amy continued. Different from humans, but complementary in unexpected ways. The nanites find this intriguing. You speak of these nanites as if they're separate from you, Teth observed. Are they controlling you? Amy laughed, the sound surprisingly human despite everything. No more than your brain controls you, Commander. We're integrated. Evolved. Her expression sobered, which is why this standoff is pointless. I've overridden your weapon systems. Your remaining security forces can't harm me. And I've already accessed most of your research databases. Teth's skin flashed with alarm patterns. Then why this confrontation? Why not simply take what you want and leave? Because there's information that isn't in your databases, Amy replied. Information stored only in the minds of your senior researchers and officers. She stepped closer to Teth. Information about your empire's plans for humanity. The command center fell silent. You think this is just about me, Amy continued, her voice softer now. One human seeking revenge. But Phoenix Protocol wasn't designed solely for battlefield resurrection. It was created because we knew someone was studying us, taking specimens, testing our limits. A cold feeling spread through Teth's body as the implications sank in. You were bait, he realized. Sent to be captured. Not exactly, Amy admitted. But the possibility was accounted for. Humans may seem primitive to your empire, but we're remarkably good at contingency planning. She raised her hand, and the ship's lighting shifted to a deep red emergency configuration. Now, Commander, I have control of your ship, your databases, and soon the tactical information in your mind. But I'm offering you a choice, the same choice I've offered everyone else. Cooperate willingly, or... She let the alternative hang unspoken. Teth's skin displayed complex, conflicted patterns. And if I cooperate, what happens to my crew? Those who assist me will be treated humanely, Amy promised. No further experimentation. No punishment for following orders. All I want is information. And once you have it? Amy smiled, but the expression didn't reach her metallic-tinged eyes. Then we discussed the terms under which I release this vessel back to your control. You expect me to believe you'll simply let us go? Teth asked incredulously. Commander, Amy replied, if I wanted to kill everyone on this ship, I could have vented the atmosphere hours ago. The nanites allow me to survive in vacuum temporarily. She crossed her arms. But that's not the mission. Before Teth could respond, alarms began blaring, not the internal security alerts that had been sounding periodically, but deep space proximity warnings. Interesting timing, Amy noted, glancing at the tactical display. It seems we have company. The display showed 3 vessels approaching rapidly, sleek, angular ships that contrasted sharply with the bulbous organic design of the Laxian vessel. Human ships, Teth said, recognizing the configuration from intelligence briefings. Earth exploratory fleet, Amy confirmed. Specifically the heavy cruiser Montgomery, accompanied by 2 destroyer-class vessels. She turned back to Teth. Your decision just became time-sensitive, Commander. The communication request from the Earth vessels came precisely 5 minutes after they entered weapons range. Amy watched the Laxians with interest as they debated how to respond. We cannot permit them to discover what has transpired here, argued Security Chief Lormex, his skin displaying urgent warning patterns. The Empire would lose all advantage of secrecy. If we don't respond, they'll open fire, countered one of the junior officers. 3 military vessels against our research ship, we wouldn't stand a chance. Commander Teth's 4 eyes blinked in sequence, a gesture Amy had come to recognize as his version of collecting his thoughts. But the creature. Lieutenant Rodriguez, Amy corrected firmly. Lieutenant Rodriguez controls our systems, Teth continued, acknowledging her with a slight nod. Any response would be at her discretion. All eyes turned to Amy, who was leaning casually against a console. Well, she said, this is awkward. Should I tell them you've been torturing one of their officers to death? Or would you prefer to handle that diplomatic exchange yourselves? The silence in the command center was deafening. What do you want? Teth asked finally, his skin displaying resignation patterns. Amy straightened. Open a channel. I'll speak to them. After a moment's hesitation, Teth nodded to the communications officer. The main view screen flickered to life, showing the bridge of the human vessel. A stern-faced woman with commander's insignia occupied the central chair. Laxian vessel. This is Commander Helen Vargas of the Eve Montgomery. You are holding an Earth citizen against her will. Prepare to be boarded or face immediate hostile action. Amy stepped forward into the camera's field. Commander Vargas, this is Lieutenant Amara Rodriguez. Situation under control. Request secure channel. Authorization Phoenix 79er Alpha. The commander's expression shifted subtly, surprise, quickly masked. Authorizing secure channel. Stand by. The screen briefly displayed secure transmission active before Commander Vargas reappeared. Lieutenant, your status? Captured, experimented upon, temporarily deceased, and subsequently enhanced, Amy replied concisely. I've gained control of the Laxian vessel and accessed significant intelligence regarding their operations. Vargas's eyebrows rose slightly. Phoenix protocol activated? Affirmative. With unexpected modifications due to alien interface technology. Vargas nodded once, sharply. Understood. Extraction team standing by. Negative, Amy responded. I require 12 more hours to complete intelligence gathering. The Laxian command staff has agreed to cooperate fully in exchange for certain considerations. Commander Vargas's eyes narrowed. What sort of considerations, Lieutenant? Amnesty for the research team, Amy said, noting the subtle ripple of tension through the Laxians behind her, in exchange for complete transfer of their research data and technology. These aren't military personnel, Commander. They're scientists who made some regrettable decisions under pressure from their government. She turned slightly to address Teth. Isn't that right, Commander? Teth's skin displayed an intricate pattern of submission and agreement. Yes, we will provide everything. Vargas frowned. Lieutenant, they tortured you. They killed you. And I've been reborn with capabilities beyond anything in our arsenal, Amy replied calmly. What they've done can't be undone, but we can ensure it wasn't for nothing. The technology they've developed, the interface that allowed me to integrate with their systems, it's revolutionary. Think of the applications, Commander. Amy could see Vargas calculating, weighing options, responsibilities, protocols. 12 hours, Vargas finally said. We'll maintain position. But Lieutenant, Phoenix Protocol gives you operational autonomy, not diplomatic authority. Understood, Commander. I'll accept full responsibility for my decisions. After the transmission ended, Amy turned to face the QR-Laxian crew. They watched her with a mixture of fear and fascination that she found both satisfying and disturbing. Now, she said, let's discuss exactly what you're going to give Earth in exchange for your lives. Security Chief Lormex's skin flashed defiance. The Empire will never. The Empire isn't here. Amy cut him off. And by the time they arrive, this will be over. One way or another. She moved to the central console and placed her hand on the interface. The ship's systems responded instantly, information flooding her consciousness. It no longer hurt. The neural pathways they'd forcibly created during their experiments had stabilized, allowing her to process the data stream effortlessly. I've accessed your research archives, she continued, including communications with your military command. I know this wasn't authorized at the highest levels. This was a rogue operation, wasn't it? A chance to gain advantage before formal first contact negotiations. Teth's skin patterns shifted to resignation tinged with fear. How did you? Your encryption is impressive, but once I became part of the system, there were no barriers. Amy smiled thinly. So here's what happens next. You give me everything: research data, interface technology, communications protocols, and in return, I convince my people that you're more valuable as scientific collaborators than as prisoners of war. And if we refuse? Asked Lormex. Amy's expression hardened. Then I open the airlocks and let my colleagues collect what they need from your floating corpses. She paused, her voice softening slightly. I don't want that. Despite everything, I believe there's potential for cooperation between our species. But that's entirely up to you. The 12 hours passed quickly. Amy worked tirelessly, downloading vast amounts of data while supervising the QR-Laxians as they packaged technology samples and prepared detailed technical documentation. When Commander Vargas and her extraction team finally boarded, they found Amy waiting calmly in the docking bay. Lieutenant, Vargas greeted her, eyeing the visible changes to Amy's physiology with barely concealed shock. The metallic traces beneath her skin caught the light as she moved. Commander, Amy replied. Mission accomplished. The QR-Laxians have been most cooperative. Behind her stood Commander Teth and his senior staff, their skin displaying complex patterns of anxiety and hope. As the Earth team secured the vessel, Vargas pulled Amy aside. The Admiralty is going to have questions about this arrangement, Lieutenant. Amy nodded. I expect they will. But once they see what we've gained, she gestured to her altered body. This is just the beginning, Commander. The interface technology alone will revolutionize our understanding of human-machine integration. And what about you? Vargas asked quietly. Medical will want to examine you thoroughly. Of course. Amy's smile didn't quite reach her eyes. Though I doubt they'll fully understand what I've become. Later, as the Earth vessels prepared to depart with their QR-Laxian prisoners or guests, depending on one's perspective, Amy stood alone in an observation bay, watching the stars. She felt the ship's systems humming around her, a constant digital whisper she could now understand instinctively. She wondered briefly what awaited her back on Earth. Tests, certainly. Debriefings. Probably some form of quarantine until they determined exactly what the QR-Laxians had done to her. But none of that troubled her. She had died on this ship and been reborn as something new, something that existed between worlds, between species, between organic and digital realms. Whatever came next, Amy Rodriguez knew one thing with absolute certainty: nothing would ever be the same again.